Hi, welcome back. Now is talking Chun Ming. He's talking about deploying OpenNebula in a snap with configuration management tools.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Are we full from lunch? You know, I'll try to promise you that this presentation not to be too boring, because I want you to be awake in my presentation, and it's kind of bad for me if you're all sleeping right now. Okay, so the title of my talk is, as you can see, is a rather lengthy one. I couldn't shorten the name. I'm going to show you how I actually deploy OpenNebula very quickly using configuration management tools. But then, first of all, who am I? Okay, my name is Chun Ming. I'm from Malaysia, for those who've been trying to figure out where I'm from, Singapore, China, or wherever. I'm not. I'm from Malaysia. Okay, I work for Olin Data. I'm the principal consultant in Olin Data as well as the lead trainer. What we normally dabble in, or what I normally do is, as you can see, I dabble in Puppet. Olin Data is the Puppet Labs partner in Asia and Europe. So I travel everywhere globally, all over Asia and Europe, to deliver Puppet trainings as well as to consult my clients on Puppet. But that's not what I do. I also do dabble in OpenStack and anything that is system administration related. Okay, Linux sysadmin. I'm a Linux sysadmin, not a Windows sysadmin. And like Carlo, was it who was saying yesterday? Windows Vista is a disaster, right? So I believe that Windows is definitely a disaster. Don't you agree with me? Or unless there is a Windows admin here? No? Great. Okay, so I'm also not a developer. I do programming once in a while. I'm a Python backend developer. I used to do Python, but I stopped altogether because I don't love programming. I respect programmers. Okay, they build the tools that I use now, but that does not mean I want to be a programmer. And really, whatever that I do in the company is, or in my day-to-day basics of my job, is everything related to sysadmin. So practically databases, network, virtualization, anything that relates to sysadministration in general. So as long as not development, as long as not Windows, I'm happy. I like to keep myself happy. You know, happiness is the key to long life. Okay, so as I promised, I'm going to keep this short and sweet, right? And I try not to give you too many words on the screen, so I'll be using graphics instead, and I'll try to keep you interested. So please try to stay awake if you can. If you can't stay awake, maybe you want to stare at this picture longer a little bit. Okay, so what got me into OpenNebula, okay, is basically the cloud computing, right? This year is all about cloud computing. I've been traveling left and right all over, you know, on a weekly basis. I'm in a different country, and my client or my students comes to me and say, hey, Chun Ming, we want to automate our cloud infrastructure. We want to deploy something on the cloud. We want to build a portal where you can click on a service and deploy your stack. So that is what everybody wants now, this one whole year. I got the same question at least 5 to 6 times in a day. So they have been asking me that. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll show you how to do this. You know, after a while you get bored. It's always OpenStack, VMware, EC2 and whatnot. But then one of my clients told me, have you heard of OpenNebula? To be honest, I haven't actually heard of OpenNebula until January this year. So that's when I started using OpenNebula, deploying it for my clients, or started testing it on my own. So first of all, when I want to look in OpenNebula, obviously I go to opennebula.org to find out what it is. But in order to actually understand how it works, we have to read the documentation, right? The documentation is like my Bible. Any documentation. We take a look at how an application works. and infrastructure work. This documentation, what I can say, is the entry point for any new user to actually find out whether they are interested or not to use this product in their current system setup. So if your documentation is rather rubbish, you think there will be new users using your product? I don't think so. What got me interested also with opennebula is the simplicity. Okay, the document highlights the simplicity of what it can do. That's what I want, you know. So after reading it, you know, trying to understand the concept, going through tutorials, going through webinars, what else do I actually do? Now I will actually try to deploy it. But then again, when I deploy it, there are always kind of problems popping up. So I was like, what do you mean by this? You know, what is this messages coming out to me? Is it a problem? Is it working or not? I can't really tell, right? For a new user like me, when I provision, let's just say I add a new host to opennebula, I get to choose the type of networking. So when I take a look at the list of networks there, I have dummy networking, I have EB tables, I have VLAN tagging, I have firewalls, I have Open vSwitch. That is to just add one compute node host. But then when you have a list of things like that, then I'll take a look again. What do you mean by that? There's nothing in the documentation that tells me how it works. So I spend days and days going through IRC channels, you know, emailing people. How does opennebula actually work? So I spent quite a long time understanding it, how it actually works by setting it up. That's a hard way. So, but then again, finally I got it working. You know, when you get it working, you'll be like, oh yeah, this is awesome, you know? You start testing it out. Yes, I like it. It's working, right? Then we'll see, oh, now this is somehow maybe better than OpenStack or it's better than VMware. Because why? Because this opennebula simplifies a lot of things that I wanted to have, okay? I'm not going to compare OpenStack and opennebula here because this is an opennebula conference. It's not a camp where we debate things. So I'm just going to keep it biased towards opennebula. So opennebula, yes, indeed, it has do a lot of things. It's working, but the learning curve for me is too high, right? So for someone who comes from another platform, right? Another cloud platform, trying to understand what is something new, whether I want to integrate it for my clients. When my client tell me, hey, Chunming, can you deploy for us opennebula? Can you tell us why is it better than another setup? Can you help us to scale it? So this is the thing where I want to simplify my learning. Okay, it's working. So what is next after I got my setup working? I have problems. So I have problems where my colleague or my friends, they will be like, start tweaking my setup. And they will say, they tweak the setup and they just left. And then they never tell me whether is it working or not after that. They just left me with whatever they have done. So it's similar to a case where you build a infrastructure. Your junior sysadmin or your colleague comes into the picture and they start tweaking, changing configurations, right? And then what do? They do nothing about it. Do they tell you? Maybe they did, maybe they did not, right? If they did not, did they document it? They did not document it for sure. I'm pretty sure. How many of you actually document your changes for every tweak that you do into your opennebula system or any system? Can I see a show of hands? No. Okay, see, no one documented, right? So what happened if I take a look at this broken piece? Obviously, I feel like flipping my table. I want to smack my laptop down. It's not working. I want to make it work, you know. And when I find you, I'm definitely say, you fix what you break. But what happened if that person already left the company. You are no longer in touch with that person. Say bye-bye. He's dead to your eyes. So how are you going to fix it? So that is kind of problem that we will keep facing, right? We do not know when someone will actually tweak your setup. You want to make sure your setup is always consistent. It's always reliable in a way that you know you leave it there and you go away. Even after you leave the company, it is still standing still. It's a solid system that you have built to last until now. I work in my previous company that builds CDN network. I built it out of Puppet, and it's still standing still, serving thousands and thousands of servers because I know it's consistent. Whatever that I do is permanent. Whoever changes it, the changes will not be reflected, right? Because Puppet takes care of it. So, in this case, what comes into the picture? The DevOps, the automation, the configuration management tools. We have so many tools these days, all right? We have Puppet. We have heard about Puppet twice yesterday. One from David from Puppet Labs. He's there playing with his phone. I'm not sure. And Norman from ePost. He's like smiling at the back there. And so both of them illustrated how the Puppet can build to automate OpenNebula. Then there is Chef as well, the rival of Puppet. And obviously there's also SaltStack and Sybil, and our friend at the back there is going to talk about SaltStack after me. And so basically there's so many tools that you can use to automate your setup. And these tools are not only helping you to speed up your learning, your deployment, okay? If I were to quote what Ignacio said yesterday during his keynote, simplicity. We do not need an army of sysadmins to build an infrastructure. If you can have one person to build a very huge infrastructure, isn't that the most cost-effective way of doing something? That's what we want, isn't it? Also, we're talking about reliability. Reliability when you build a setup. We build a setup where, the configuration would never change, even if someone's changed it, and because they did not commit the changes to the configuration management tool, they made an ad hoc change, it would not be reflected. It would be reverted because it's reliable in that sense, right? It's solid. Your setup is solid. It's confirmed to be guaranteed working. Flexibility. You are allowed to scale easily. We have the feature of federations. We can add VDCs, right, to OpenNebula. But then again, how long will you take to build an infrastructure like that? A federated infrastructure. Yes, less than 100 servers is easy. But what happens if you have thousands and thousands of servers? You have different data centers globally. You want to federate them. You want to scale faster. You want to build from a bare metal setup. You want it to be quick. So this is the time where configuration management comes into play, right? We define the state of our servers using configuration management. We define it in these tools. And these tools do what they do best. They will set up the entire infrastructure according to your definition. If I tell the configuration management tool, let's say Puppet or Chef, for example, if my server A should be my Sunstone server only, serving only the GUI, the tool should always make sure that only the server will serve only the GUI, not the 1D daemon, not the node, not anything else. That is the kind of guarantee we want, right? We do not want unwanted surprise. When you get unwanted surprise, you're actually shortening your lifespan, right? How many times you actually go for a horror movie in the cinema and then you get a shock because it's freaking scary, or you get a shock of your life, right? Those kind of things actually shortening your lifespan, whether you like it or not. The thrill of it is interesting, but shortening your life maybe not. Okay, so after we define everything is reliable, then it's easy to scale, and then it's simple because with configuration management tools, You write it once, and then you reuse it over and over again, right? You just redeploy the same code to different data centers, and then you can bring them together by the same code as well, like a federation. You can incorporate from end-to-end setup. You can incorporate it from bare metal provisioning setup, the OS setup, all the way to the point where you set up OpenNebula, then you deploy your VM. After you deploy your VM, you set up your VM with all the necessary components, applications that you need. So that's one end to another end, right? So from what we do is A to Z in a single code without, template. Template is awesome, but there are limitations. We have to do contextualization. We have to do this, that, right? But I'm a fan of building things from scratch, yet everything is still identical. Okay, so after we build everything, obviously what we get to do is we get to be like, like Homer, we sit down, we just relax. We don't have to do too much of work. Why? Because we can deploy the code one time, and then we can have a gigantic infrastructure to our liking. We could probably have scaled it, right? We can couple it with any third-party application, like Foreman, for example. Use Foreman, a dashboard that can provision bare metal. You use this to provision bare metal servers, and then on top of that, you use Foreman to use Puppet to install OpenNebula on your setup. And then once your OpenNebula setup is ready, then you automatically provision your VMs, will connect to your Puppet master again, provision your VM with all the application, and then do the stacking together like your OneFlow template and services. So this is what I call simplicity. This is how I want to simplify my life, right? By doing this, right, from my experience, when I took more than 2 weeks to understand how to set up OpenNebula and then deploy it, compared to when I use Puppet. I'm a Puppet guy, so I will use Puppet for sure, right? I can write in Chef Ansible, but still I choose Puppet. So when I deploy with Puppet, I do not need to exactly go through documentation, because I just need to go through the Puppet codes. Infrastructure as a code. Your infrastructure becomes a code, right? Like David mentioned. And then what we do is, from the code, we can tell how to set up our infrastructure easily. We do not really rely on the actual documentation, because there's a lot of things could be missing from your documentation. Does the documentation tell you how to make Ceph work? No. Did it tell you how to make IP tables or the OpenV networking work? No. The documentation gives you another link. Please refer to this link to set it up. And then you have another documentation to read. There's too many documentations in our lifetime to read. I don't like to read documentation. I'm a very lazy person. I think I spend half of my time like that, sitting down somewhere, maybe with some food and tea or beer. Okay, maybe not in a singlet. Yeah, I dress nicely still. Okay, so but then again, it's very important, if we want to compete or we want to push our services faster. We want simplicity where anybody can come into your position and deploy something. Let's just say, what happened if you were to leave the company or you were to go on holiday? Then your boss tells you, say, build me an identical environment like your production on your staging from scratch. You're going to take weeks and weeks to do it, to mimic the configuration. Maybe weeks or days, right? But if you use configuration management tool, you cut down by a huge number, right? You cut down a huge number that you probably could get it done within a few hours. You can tell your boss, I'll get it done in a few days. But in reality, you finish in a few hours, and then you go off for your holiday. We love being lazy. Sysadmins are being lazy. Configuration management tool, unfortunately, makes people lazy. Okay? So, now, I'm going to show you a demo. I realize that there's not much of technical demo during this conference, right? So, I'll show you a demo how I actually provision a Sunstone and a 1D on one server. as well as using Puppet to add the host to the infrastructure, meaning adding a node. So basically, and I'm using ePost Puppet module, which is only supported up to version 4.6. I just found out yesterday. So I spent the whole day fixing it. So a disclaimer, it might not work. So it might work, but it might not work. My last test, like 20 minutes ago, it was working. So I'm hoping it will work. Okay, and I made it to support version 4.10, and there is some bugs, but still you have to bear with me. Okay, let's see. So this is running on a Debian machine. I know you do not, your documentation says nothing about Debian support, but I'm a Debian fan and I don't really like Ubuntu, so I try to make it work. CentOS, unfortunately, the module doesn't work on it. So, I mean, it works, OpenNebula works fine on CentOS, but the Puppet module doesn't work, so I have to fix it. It's still under a lot of bug fixing. And right, so I cheated a little bit in here. I built the what do you call it, the bridge already, and I pre-download the packages so that, you know, saves a lot of time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my Puppet repository, and I'm using the latest Puppet Enterprise version, by the way. It's blazing fast. Then I'll edit the Puppet manifest to deploy. Can everyone see that? If you can't see it, maybe you need to come closer. I'm not going to enlarge it. You're too far. It means that you're too far away. Okay, let me remove the comments. Okay, so here I'll put my node classification. So this server is called 1.allindata.vm. What I'm going to do is I'm going to classify it with a Puppet class to set up a one server with a daemon, a Sunstone GUI, and one flow. So class 1. So this is the very basic step to set up, but I do not want to show you this. I want to show you more. So in order to add the server to as a host, first of all, you need the SSH key, right? Unfortunately, I can't really automate it because I haven't actually found a way how to do it yet. And so I'm just going to do a little hack here. The key? The color, yeah. Yeah, just give me a second, yeah. Probably instead I will do this. Don't worry about the blue color. The blue color is all comments. Yeah, the white color is just a comma there. Okay, don't worry about it. I will probably, let's see if I can edit a session. Okay, then authorized key, current working directory will be in var lib1. The next thing here is I'm using a Puppet type, a resource type, to actually call the API to add the host into OpenNebula. So which host is ensure present, meaning that if someone removes this host from your setup by accident or purpose, Puppet will re-add it back regardless. So this is what I call by reliability, right? It's always, when you ensure it to be there, it will always be there. KVM. Virtual network is dummy. And yeah, this should be it. So this will set up a one server with 1D, one flow, Sunstone. Then after complete of the setup, you will populate the SSH key. After that, then you will add the the host using the one host API. Let's see what happened when Puppet runs. I'm crossing my finger it doesn't actually fail. It failed me a couple of times this morning. So this is how I actually will do instead of doing it manually, because doing it manually takes too much of my time, and it takes too much of my learning, and I want to deploy quickly. Usually my clients, they like to say, can I have it by tomorrow? Or can I have it in the next few hours? Okay. So as we can see now, it's doing a lot of different things, like it's creating the prerequisite user, the groups, the app preferences, and it's paused here right now because it's still doing something in the background. Whatever you see on a standard out is the action that has already been taken, right? You will be able to see what's running in the background if I run in a debug mode, but it has like, a billion lines in a debug mode. Please work. But in any case, I will still entertain questions if you have any questions. Okay, let this run while I do this. Q&A. Please be kind. As you have any questions so far? Yes. Maybe you get a mic. I have a problem with my hearing.
Just curious, what's the -T
Sorry?
in the Puppet command?
The Puppet command, okay. Puppet agent -T, meaning is you running the Puppet agent on the foreground without daemonizing it, and verbose, meaning putting out output to your screen. And as you can see, it's actually doing something. It's going through the installation of the packages. I'm not downloading any packages because this packages has been pre-cached. I downloaded last night, so that because I tried downloading it here, it took me 3 hours, so forget it. And so it's installing the background. But yes, but still, you have any questions, please you feel free to ask right now, or otherwise we can look at the screen and see how it works.
Right, so I have a question, and I think it's more about Puppet in particular. There are some things in OpenNebula that are not synchronous, like when you create an image. For instance, when you create a data store.
Maybe you want to speak closer.
Oh yeah, when you create a data store, the data store, you have to wait until the data store is monitored to see how much free space it has before you can register a new image.
Yes.
So how can Puppet and maybe other configuration management tools handle that kind of synchronicity? You have to wait until specific action until you create a new image.
Well, there are a lot of ways I can think that it might help. For instance, we can store metadata in PuppetDB, right? And whenever we store this metadata information in PuppetDB, whether the data store is ready or not, and then when Puppet agent runs, it can query the PuppetDB for this metadata. If it's already ready, then we can input this data store into the OpenNebula setup. Maybe that's how you want to do it. I might not be so clear, but maybe David can help me out a little bit.
Well, I mean, so all these types, like the one class used and all that backdoor Ruby code that's actually constituted by normal. So for the data store thing, I think the easiest would be to just have the Ruby code call the easiest data stores ready here for just wait. I don't know how long it takes for data store to come online. 5 hours, that's not a solution, but like a couple minutes, that's probably the easiest solution. Just the Puppet type and add images. Just have that checked whether the data source is pending or ready.
Essentially, by storing some form of metadata into the PuppetDB, you can actually query it all the time. So PuppetDB is used by a lot of different applications. Yeah, the API could even work too. And yes, I have completed my setup. It took 2 seconds for this, and let's see. I added a host earlier, right, with my code. And as you can see, it has been added. So basically, it has a form of automation where I deploy. So this is just a simple example. But you can think of the possibility where, let's just say, if you were to provision the entire setup all at the same time, what will happen? That could be interesting, in my opinion. But until this Puppet module is properly fixed, I don't think so we can do it. I will spend some time pushing it to the GitHub repository. I will do some pull requests to Norman so he can incorporate it. And then once it's ready, then we can actually start deploying it with Puppet. You know, Puppet is like one of the easiest language, unfortunately, compared to Sol, Chef, or Ansible. I'm sorry. Okay, and yeah, so if you have no question, okay, I'm done. Yes, you have.
Well, wait.
My question is, if you're in the build-up phase and doing your tests before you write the configuration policy, do you take notes of everything you're trying, or when do you make the turnover to writing actual policy?
For this
Yeah.
manifest.
So first you test manually and find what's broken.
Let's take, for example, with this module, how I was doing it, right? So I took his existing module, I ran it to see whether it's working. It works, actually, but it's running at 4.6, which is too old, right? So I tried to figure out how to make it 4.10. Then I come along to some errors as we go along, and then I fix it as we go along. So basically, I have 2 VMs on the go, trying to deploy it, to fix the problems, and then to test it. And then when it's working, then it's great, voila. Then that is on one operating system. But then again, I'm testing it on another operating system at the same time. CentOS did not work with this module. It's something to do with the packages and some binaries that went missing. So I can't actually make it work. So I need to spend some time working on it. But for sure, I can say now the Ubuntu 14.04 and Debian 7 works with this module up to this point. I can create a virtual network as well. The only downside is I cannot create an IP range. I can create a network, but the IP ranges are not created. Instead, it added metadata for me, so I have no idea why. Okay, any other question? Yes.
One moment.
Yes.
What's the largest OpenNebula deployment you've rolled out that way? Because you mentioned thousands of nodes earlier, I was just curious.
Oh, when I said thousands of nodes, actually through Puppet, not necessarily just OpenNebula. It's just like through OpenStack or anything. It's through Puppet. I make it simple that you can deploy thousands of nodes. And my previous setup with my old company was not OpenNebula. It's our own custom setup. But it demonstrates the power of configuration management tool where I deploy and manage thousands of servers using a single Puppet master. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll say bye-bye. Right. Thank you. And if you have any question, you can contact me, and this will be the Git repositories. I'll put them up into the company's GitHub and my private GitHub as well. All right. Thank you.